Ladies and gentlemen, let's cut through the noise. You've been there. You're talking to someone who's distant, hard to read, sometimes even emotionally unavailable. One moment he's warm, the next he's cold. You start questioning yourself. Is it me? Did I imagine that connection? Why does he pull away just when things start to feel real? Let me tell you something powerful. Not all distance is rejection. We're conditioned to believe that love should always look like fireworks. Loud, bright, obvious. But for some people, especially those with avoidant tendencies, love doesn't show up like an explosion. It shows up like hesitation. It shows up like fear. Why? Because love to them is dangerous. It threatens the control they've spent a lifetime building. It cracks the armor they wear to survive. You see, avoidant people are often deeply emotional, but they've learned to bury it to protect themselves from pain. So what's the behavior? What's the sign that he's secretly in love? He stays. Not in a loud movie script way. He may not always know what to say, but he's there. He may avoid deep conversations, but he listens. He may not text first, but he always replies. He might not open up easily, but when you're hurting, he notices. And he shows up. Now hear me, I'm not saying you should wait around for someone to change or excuse toxic behavior, but don't confuse stillness with indifference. For the avoidant man, love doesn't look like pursuit, it looks like presence. Quiet presence. Hesitant commitment. Micro acts of vulnerability. When he lets his guard down, even for a moment. That's not small, that's monumental for him. The moment he shares something personal without prompting, the moment he gets jealous then denies it, the moment he pulls you closer after pulling away, that is love trapped in fear. See, his heart wants to leap, but his brain says, don't risk it. You've been hurt before. So love fights its way through old wounds, insecurity, past rejection. And when it finally peeks through, it's real. Here's your power. You don't chase him. You don't fix him. You mirror strength. You show what safe love looks like without abandoning your own standards. Because love isn't about losing yourself for someone else. It's about inviting them to rise up beside you. If he's avoidant, but he's still trying, even in clumsy, awkward ways, if he backs away but never walks away, if he fears the intimacy but fears losing you more, that's not just interest. That's love under construction. So don't be fooled by the silence. Watch for the actions. And remember, some hearts whisper, not shout. Avoidance is often fear, not indifference. This is one of the most misunderstood dynamics in relationships, especially when dealing with emotionally avoidant individuals. On the surface, it may appear that the person is cold, uninterested, or disconnected. They might pull away when things start getting emotionally intense. They might go days without reaching out, seem distracted in conversations, or respond with vague and guarded answers when asked about their feelings. To someone on the receiving end, this behavior can feel like rejection, like they're not valued or wanted. But this surface interpretation often misses the deeper truth. Many avoidant individuals are not avoiding you, they're avoiding vulnerability. They're avoiding the emotional exposure that love brings. To love is to be seen. To love is to be known. And for someone who spent years learning to protect themselves through distance, silence, or emotional detachment, that kind of exposure feels like danger. It feels unsafe, even threatening. Avoidance is a defense mechanism. It's not a character flaw. It's a strategy, one that may have been developed early in life. Maybe they grew up in a household where emotions weren't expressed or where vulnerability was punished or ignored. Maybe they were taught that self-reliance is strength, that needing someone else is weakness. and that intimacy always leads to pain. Over time, they built walls, not to hurt others, but to protect themselves from being hurt again. So when someone with an avoidant attachment style starts developing genuine feelings for another person, there's an internal war. Their heart says yes, but their nervous system says run. The closer someone gets, the more it activates that survival instinct. Their system goes into lockdown. They withdraw, not because they don't care, but because they care too much. The emotional weight becomes overwhelming. It's not that they don't feel, they feel deeply, but they often don't know how to process or express it. What looks like indifference is often self-protection. What appears as detachment is sometimes a signal that emotions are rising to an uncomfortable level. He may care deeply, but showing it would require opening a door that's been locked for years. Vulnerability requires trust, and for someone avoidant, trust isn't given easily. It's not a natural state. It has to be earned slowly over time through consistency and emotional safety. This is why avoidant individuals may show signs of love in indirect or even contradictory ways. He may remember a small detail you mentioned weeks ago, but not say anything about how he feels. He might do something thoughtful, like helping you solve a problem or being there in a moment of need, but he won't talk about why he did it. He's uncomfortable with emotional transparency. The very thing that makes relationships thrive, openness, connection, presence, feels like too much. But here's the important distinction. Fear-based avoidance is not the same as a lack of feeling. In fact, the more he feels, the more avoidant he may become. Emotionally avoidant people often fall hard, but silently. They experience love like a secret storm inside, and unless they've done the inner work, they don't know how to let it out. They haven't yet found a way to hold love without also feeling overwhelmed by it. When you're involved with someone who is emotionally avoidant, it's easy to take the behavior personally. But doing so only adds confusion and pain. Instead, you need to learn to interpret the pattern. You have to look past the surface behavior and ask, what's the motivation underneath? If you see someone pulling away when things get close, but returning again and again, there's something real there. If he keeps showing up, even inconsistently, it may be that he's trying to manage emotions that feel bigger than he can handle. His withdrawal doesn't always mean he doesn't care. Sometimes it means he cares so much that it terrifies him. And in those moments, he chooses the only safety he knows: space. Understanding this dynamic doesn't mean you should accept emotional unavailability. Boundaries still matter. You don't abandon your needs or emotional well-being to accommodate someone else's wounds. But you can begin to see that avoidance is rarely a lack of love. It's fear in disguise. It's love wearing armor. It's a fragile heart that's been conditioned to stay hidden, not because it doesn't want to be held, but because it doesn't know how. Love in avoidant men shows through quiet consistency. It's not the loud, sweeping gestures that are easily recognized in romance films or social media highlight reels. It's subtle, almost imperceptible if you're not paying close attention. For an avoidant man, love is something he guards, something he feels deeply but struggles to express outwardly in traditional ways. It doesn't burst out of him in declaration. It seeps out slowly, quietly, carefully. When you're dealing with someone who has avoidant tendencies, you'll likely notice that his behavior isn't always aligned with what you'd expect from someone in love. He may not be overly affectionate. He may avoid emotional conversations or shy away when things get serious. But if you look closer, there's something else going on. Something more important than momentary intensity. There is consistency. He may be emotionally cautious, but he's physically present. He shows up. He doesn't disappear when things aren't easy. He might get quiet, he might need space, but he doesn't vanish entirely. There's a rhythm to his behavior that tells you even if he's unsure how to express his emotions, he's still choosing to remain in your life. That rhythm, however imperfect, is a reflection of love trying to survive within the framework of avoidance. Avoidant men don't lack feelings. In fact, many feel more than they know how to handle. Because they've learned to suppress or minimize emotional responses for most of their lives, love feels like unfamiliar territory. It challenges their sense of control. It demands vulnerability, and that demand often causes them to retreat, not because they don't feel, but because they don't feel safe in feeling. But even in that discomfort, he may still keep showing up in small, repeated ways. He checks in, even if he doesn't initiate long conversations. He remembers the things you like, even if he doesn't make a big deal out of it. He does things for you, not in grand, performative ways, but in grounded, useful actions. Maybe he fixes something for you. Maybe he's there when your car breaks down. Maybe he sits next to you in silence when you're going through something hard. He's not trying to be romantic in the conventional sense. He's trying to be reliable because reliability feels safer for him than emotional expression. In the mind of the avoidant man, actions carry more weight than words. He may not be able to say, "I love you" easily. He may flinch at emotional intensity, but his consistency, the fact that he's still around when it would be easier to disappear, is often his version of saying it. For someone avoidant, being dependable is an act of intimacy. It's their way of offering connection without putting their heart on the line in ways that feel threatening. This quiet consistency can sometimes feel frustrating for partners who want more overt affection. It's natural to want clarity, verbal affirmation, and open emotional sharing. But for the avoidant man, those things often come later, after trust is built. In the meantime, the real signal to watch for is whether he's making an effort to stay connected, even if imperfectly. Avoidant men often test emotional waters with caution. They'll take a step forward, then a step back. But they don't walk away entirely if they care. Their love isn't impulsive, it's deliberate. It's not dramatic, but it's durable. And if you look back over time, you'll see a pattern. He may not have given you fireworks, but given you presence. He's stayed through discomfort. He's found his own way of being near, even if he doesn't always know how to let you in. This kind of consistency isn't about perfection. It's not about constant availability. It's about a person who keeps returning to the relationship despite their own fear and emotional limitations. It's about someone who chooses over and over again not to leave, even if love scares them. And that choice, especially for someone who's wired to pull away, speaks volumes. It's easy to miss these signs when you're looking for dramatic expressions. But love in avoidant men rarely announces itself. It reveals itself in repetition, in effort, in the decision to stay, even when it's hard. These men are not emotionless. They are simply cautious. And in that caution, the quiet consistency they offer is their most honest version of love. Presence over passion. He stays even if he's distant. This is one of the most telling signs of an avoidant man's love. It doesn't always look like fiery passion or romantic intensity. It doesn't always sound like sweet words or emotional declarations. It looks like him continuing to show up, to stay connected in his own limited way, even when everything in him wants to flee. For an avoidant man, closeness triggers fear. Intimacy brings discomfort. But when he chooses to stay, to remain in your life, that is an act of courage wrapped in silence. The avoidant man is often misunderstood because people interpret his emotional distance as a lack of interest. They expect love to come dressed as enthusiasm, affection, and constant communication. But what many miss is that emotional distance can coexist with deep, sincere love, especially in someone who has learned to protect themselves by staying detached. His nervous system may scream for space when things get real. His instincts may tell him to shut down, to pull back, to create room. Yet, if he continues to maintain a place in your life, that's not indifference, that's presence. And it's one of the most vulnerable gifts he can offer. Presence from an avoidant partner is often confusing. It's not always easy to interpret. He might not talk about the future. He might shy away from affectionate gestures, but he doesn't leave. He may create emotional distance, but he doesn't exit the relationship. He may appear withdrawn, but he answers your texts. He may seem disengaged, but he notices the small things. He may not lean into the emotional connection, but he never entirely walks away from it either. This paradox of being distant and present at the same time is how love often manifests in the avoidant man. Avoidants tend to love with restraint. Their expression is muted, not because they don't care, but because passion overwhelms them. They have been conditioned to avoid emotional reliance on others, often due to early life experiences that taught them people can't be trusted to meet their emotional needs. Because of this, love feels dangerous. It feels like giving away control, and that terrifies them. So instead of diving in head first, they wade in slowly, sometimes appearing like they're not in the water at all. But they are, and the proof is in the fact that they are still there, day after day, week after week, even if they're not always emotionally expressive. This staying power is easy to overlook when you're focused on what they're not giving. But presence in this context is not passive. It's a decision, it's a series of small, consistent choices to stay in proximity to someone, despite internal discomfort. It's him fighting the urge to run every time you get emotionally close. It's him returning your call when he would rather avoid the conversation. It's him sitting next to you in silence because he doesn't know how to talk about what he's feeling. But he still wants to be near you. That is presence. And for the avoidant man, it is deeply meaningful. Avoidant men don't lean into the heat of passion the way others might. Intensity is a trigger. It makes them feel out of control. So rather than respond with more emotion, they regulate themselves by becoming colder, quieter, more reserved. But they don't disappear. Even in their detachment, they remain available in their own way. They may take longer to text back. They may shy away from serious relationship talks. But they'll still make time to see you. They'll still share their world with you, piece by piece, in a way that's cautious but real. That is how they say, I'm here, even when the words don't come. The avoidant man values autonomy. He needs space to feel safe. But if he is making you part of his routine, if he's including you in his life without needing to be pushed, then he's making a choice. Love for him is not about grand gestures. It's about consistent presence, about being part of something, even if he doesn't always know how to engage with it fully. And when you recognize this kind of love, you begin to see that presence, calm, subtle, quiet presence, is far more telling than momentary passion. Passion comes and goes. Presence stays. Passion is loud. Presence is patient. And in the case of the avoidant man, presence is his strongest signal of emotional investment. Small vulnerabilities are massive signals. When you're dealing with an avoidant man, the typical signs of affection: verbal declarations, physical closeness, emotional openness, might be few and far between. But that doesn't mean love isn't present. It just means it's expressed differently, and often in subtle, easily overlooked ways. Avoidant individuals aren't quick to reveal their inner world. They've spent most of their lives protecting it, guarding it behind emotional armor built from fear, past wounds, or early experiences that taught them vulnerability equals danger. So when they let even a small piece of that guard down, it's not a minor act, it's monumental. An avoidant man may not tell you directly that he's falling for you, but he might do something else that speaks volumes. He might share a story about his past that he's never told anyone. He might admit to a mistake, to a failure, to a moment of self-doubt. He might reveal a fear or insecurity, not with flair or drama, but quietly, as if he's testing the waters to see if it's safe to be seen. These small revelations are often dismissed or missed altogether, but they are actually giant leaps in his emotional world. For someone who avoids intimacy, even a sentence or two of emotional truth is a huge risk. The reason these small vulnerabilities matter so much is because they signal a crack in the emotional wall. And for avoidance, that wall has been their identity, their safety net, their default way of interacting with the world. To drop that, even momentarily, takes courage. It's not something they do easily. It's not something they do often. So when it happens, pay attention. It might come disguised as sarcasm or be wrapped in humor or sound almost casual, but underneath, it's a moment of real connection. It's a sign he's trying to let you in. Slowly, cautiously, but with intention. You might notice that he lets his guard down more in specific contexts. Maybe late at night when the world is quiet and he feels less on edge. Maybe after something emotional happens, like a shared struggle or a vulnerable conversation. Maybe in text, where the immediacy of a reaction is removed. These are moments where he might open up slightly more than usual. It's not a flood, but a drip. And that drip means everything. It means you're not just another person to him. You've moved into the category of emotional relevance, which is not something he gives away lightly. The avoidant man has likely learned to equate vulnerability with risk. Maybe when he was young, expressing emotion got him punished, mocked, or ignored. Maybe he was taught to be strong, independent, unemotional. So now, as an adult, those early programs still run in the background. Vulnerability sets off, alarm bells. It tells him he's exposed. That's why small disclosures from him are so important. He's not doing it for validation or attention. He's doing it because something in him is beginning to feel safe with you. And that safety is allowing him to try something he normally resists, connection. Sometimes these vulnerabilities don't come in the form of words. They show up in behavior. Maybe he lets you see him when he's stressed instead of hiding it. Maybe he introduces you to a close friend or family member. Maybe he invites you into his space, not just physically, but emotionally, by letting you into his routines, his habits, his daily life. These are all signs of trust. For someone with an avoidant pattern, letting someone get close enough to see the unpolished parts of their life is a form of emotional nakedness. It's them saying, without saying it, this matters, you matter. It's easy to overlook these signs if you're focused on the ways he still keeps you at arm's length. And yes, that distance may still be there. He may still retreat at times, become quiet, or avoid confrontation. But when he shares even a sliver of emotional truth with you, that's not accidental. That's not meaningless. That's a major shift in the emotional landscape of someone who usually avoids revealing anything at all. To recognize these small vulnerabilities as significant, you have to tune in with sensitivity. You have to understand that for the avoidant man, expression does not come naturally. Connection is something he wants but fears. And when he offers you even a small piece of his real self, it means he's fighting his instincts for the sake of something more, something deeper, something real. Don't chase, be the mirror of emotional safety. When you're involved with an avoidant man, your instinct might be to reach in when he pulls away. You want to fix the gap, close the emotional distance, make him talk, bring him closer. But chasing only reinforces his fear. It confirms his belief that intimacy means pressure, and pressure means loss of control. What he needs isn't more, it's more space to feel safe, to come toward you on his own terms, without fear of being overwhelmed or consumed. Emotional safety isn't created through force, it's created through grounded presence. An avoidant man isn't wired to process closeness in the same way others might. For him, too much emotion too quickly feels like danger It activates a need to protect himself. He's not pulling away because you did something wrong. He's pulling away because he's been trained by his past to equate closeness with loss of self. And when he feels that pressure building, whether through emotional intensity, demands for answers, or constant need for reassurance, his instinct is to retreat, to disappear, to go silent. That's not because he doesn't care, but because that's what safety has always looked like to him, distance. So the key is not to chase, but to regulate your own emotional presence in a way that tells him, I'm safe, I don't need to control you, I don't need to force anything. I'm here, and I'm not going to punish you for being scared. That's the mirror of emotional safety. It's not passive, it's powerful. Because what you're doing is giving him the experience of being with someone who can handle his fear without feeding it. You're showing him a new model of connection, one that doesn't demand or manipulate, but instead invites and allows. This doesn't mean suppressing your needs or ignoring your feelings. Emotional safety isn't about walking on eggshells. It's about knowing that your groundedness creates more impact than your urgency. If you're constantly reacting to his distance with anxiety, he will feel that pressure and his system will shut down further. But if you can respond to his distance with calm, if you can hold space without chasing, you allow him to begin rewiring the way he experiences closeness. He begins to see that intimacy doesn't have to equal suffocation. It can mean choice, respect, and freedom. Being the mirror of emotional safety means showing up consistently without flooding him with demands. It means validating your own emotions, but also understanding that his silence doesn't always mean rejection. It means holding the paradox that you can care deeply and still give space. When you're emotionally stable in the face of his instability, you become the one thing he doesn't know how to create for himself, safety and connection. That's what draws him in. Not because you're chasing, but because you're steady. You're not a threat to his nervous system. You're not reinforcing his fear. You're soothing it by being unshakable in your own emotional center. Avoidant men aren't looking for someone to rescue them. They're looking for an experience of connection that doesn't replicate the past. They don't need intensity, they need reliability. They don't need drama, they need permission to feel without being told how to feel. And when you stop chasing and instead embody emotional safety, he feels that shift. He notices that you're not trying to pull him into something he's not waiting for. He notices that you're not making his avoidance about your worth. That's when trust begins. Not because you fixed him, but because you created the one thing he didn't know he needed, emotional freedom within connection. When he pulls back and you don't panic, that teaches him something. When he goes quiet and you don't fill the space with desperate energy, that teaches him something. When you can express your truth without trying to control his reaction, that teaches him something. It tells him that love doesn't have to be conditional, manipulative, or heavy. It tells him that intimacy can be something he chooses, not something that's forced upon him. And it's that realization, not a speech, not a confession, that makes him begin to open up, little by little on his own. You don't unlock an avoidant man's heart by prying it open. You unlock it by showing him that you're not going to run when he gets scared, and you're not going to chase him when he pulls away. You hold steady. You honor your boundaries. You speak with clarity. And through that calm, grounded presence, you reflect something powerful back to him. That real love doesn't demand, it invites. That love isn't a trap, it's a choice. And that emotional safety, more than anything else, is what creates the conditions for him to stop avoiding and start engaging.